The annual Parker family reunion was in full swing at my aunt's sprawling estate when my cousin Madison's voice cut through the chatter. "Oh look, Olivia finally made it. Still working as a secretary, sweetie." I smoothed down my simple black dress, Chanel, though they'd never recognize that, and forced a smile. If only they knew that tomorrow morning I'd be signing the papers to acquire both Madison's tech startup and my other cousin Trevor's investment firm. "Still at Thomson Corp," I replied quietly, accepting a glass of champagne. The same Thomson Corporation that I secretly own through a complex web of shell companies and private equity firms. I'm Olivia Parker, though in certain circles I'm known as OP Holdings, one of the most aggressive and successful private equity investors in the country. But to my family, I'm just the disappointing cousin who never lived up to her potential. Trevor, dressed in an expensive but poorly fitted suit, clapped me on the shoulder. "You know, Liv, I could probably find you something better. My firm is always looking for good administrative support." I sipped my champagne to hide my smile. His firm, Parker Capital, was already mine, he just didn't know it yet. I'd spent the last year quietly buying up shares through various shell companies. "That's so kind of you," I said mildly, watching him preen at his own generosity. 8 years ago, when our grandfather passed away, everyone expected his fortune to be split equally among his grandchildren. Instead, he left specific bequests. Trevor got his investment firm, Madison received seed money for her tech startup, and I got what everyone thought was the booby prize: his old office downtown and a modest trust of $250,000. Poor Olivia, they'd whispered at the well reading. She always was his favorite. Shame he didn't leave her something more substantial. What they didn't know was that Grandpa's modest office building sat on top of old property records worth millions. He'd spent years quietly acquiring land rights and mineral claims across the city. More importantly, he taught me everything he knew about building wealth quietly, patiently, without drawing attention. "You're like me, Olivia," he'd said during our secret Sunday afternoon lessons. "You understand that true power doesn't need to announce itself." Now, watching my family mingle in their designer clothes and flash their expensive watches, I thought about how right he'd been. Every one of them had squandered their inheritances on visible displays of wealth, while I had turned my worthless office building into an empire. "Olivia, darling," my Aunt Patricia swooped in, air-kissing my cheek. "We missed you at the country club last weekend." Madison was telling us all about her company's latest success. Madison preened. "We just closed another round of funding. $10 million. Not that you'd understand the complexities of tech investment, Olivia." I thought about the documents waiting on my desk, showing how her company had actually lost money for the third quarter in a row. The $10 million was a desperate attempt to keep the lights on. And tomorrow, she'd learn that the mysterious investor behind the fund was me. "Sounds fascinating," I murmured. Trevor jumped in, never one to let his cousin hog the spotlight. "Parker Capital just acquired 3 new startups. We're projecting billion-dollar returns by next quarter." I knew better. His firm was hemorrhaging money, making increasingly risky investments to cover mounting debts. That's why my quiet takeover had been so easy. Desperate people make careless decisions. "How wonderful for you both," I said, meaning it more than they knew. Their desperation had played perfectly into my plans. My cousin Ethan, the family's self-appointed financial guru, wandered over. "Still pushing papers at Thomson, Liv? You know, it's never too late to make something of yourself. Look at Madison and Trevor. They're out there building empires." If he only knew that the papers I pushed included acquisition documents for half the properties in downtown Boston. That Thomson Corp, under my secret leadership, had quietly become one of the largest property holders in 3 states. "We can't all be entrepreneurs," I said softly, thinking of the network of companies I controlled through OP Holdings. My empire made their ventures look like corner lemonade stands. The afternoon wore on, a parade of subtle digs and condescending advice. I sat through it all, playing my part as the quiet underachiever. Even when my mother joined in, lamenting how I'd wasted my business degree by becoming a secretary, I maintained my calm facade. "Have you even tried to advance your career?" she asked, concern dripping from every word. "I'm sure Trevor could help. He's doing so well with Grandpa's old firm." I thought about the meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. where Trevor would learn that his firm's mysterious majority shareholder was his underachieving cousin. "I'm comfortable where I am, Mom." Madison, overhearing, laughed. "Comfortable? Oh, honey, you should want more than comfortable. My company's about to revolutionize the tech industry. We're raising another round of funding next month." From OP Holdings, Trevor cut in. "They're the biggest player in private equity right now. Very mysterious, but they seem interested in both our companies." I hid my smile behind my champagne glass. OP Holdings, my careful construction of shell companies and private trusts, had spent years building a reputation for aggressive but anonymous acquisitions. Tomorrow, the mystery would end. "I've heard of them," I said carefully. "Quite the portfolio they're building." As if he'd know anything about high-level business dealings, Madison sniffed. "Stick to filing papers. Live. Leave the real business to those of us who understand it." Before I could respond, my aunt called everyone to dinner. I found myself seated between Trevor and Madison, listening to them compete over who had the more impressive business empire. "Parker Capital is about to close the biggest deal in our history," Trevor boasted, cutting into his steak. "Once OP Holdings signs on, we'll be unstoppable." Madison rolled her eyes. "Please, my tech platform is going to make your traditional investment firm look prehistoric. In fact, OP Holdings is more interested in my company than yours. If they only knew that both their companies were already mine, their futures decided in quiet meetings and careful legal maneuvers over the past year." Speaking of business, my mother chimed in from across the table. "Olivia, dear, have you thought about taking some night classes? Maybe get an MBA. It's not too late to start a real career." I thought about my real office, the one no one in my family had ever seen, with its view of the city skyline and the wall of acquisitions that had built my fortune. "I'm fine where I am, Mom." "That's the problem with you, Liv," Trevor said, shaking his head. "No ambition. No drive. Grandpa would be so disappointed." I touched the small key I wore on a chain around my neck, the key to Grandpa's old office, where I'd started building my empire. "I think Grandpa understood me better than you know." The conversation shifted to the latest family gossip, but I caught bits and pieces of Trevor and Madison's worried whispers. Both were counting on tomorrow's meeting with OP Holdings to save their struggling companies. Neither suspected that their savior in their downfall would be the cousin they'd spent years underestimating. As the evening wound down, I made my excuses to leave early. "Big day at work tomorrow," I said, prompting more condescending smiles. "Don't work too hard filing those papers," Madison called after me, laughing at her own joke. In my car, a modest Audi that concealed its armored exterior, I called my assistant. "Is everything ready for tomorrow?" "Yes, Ms. Parker. The contracts are prepared and the board members have been notified. Your cousin's companies won't know what hit them." I drove home to my penthouse apartment, decorated not with showy artwork like Madison's place or pretentious antiques like Trevor's, but with the simple elegance Grandpa had taught me to appreciate. In my home office, I reviewed the documents one last time. Tomorrow, OP Holdings would reveal its true identity, and my family would learn that their underachieving cousin had built something far greater than they could imagine. I picked up the photo on my desk, the last one taken of Grandpa and me in his office. He was smiling that knowing smile of his, the one that said he saw something in me that others missed. "The best success," he used to say, "is the kind they never see coming until it's too late." Tomorrow, my family would understand exactly what he meant. The morning after the reunion, I arrived at the Thompson Corp headquarters early, not in my usual secretary attire, but in a custom-made power suit that cost more than Madison's car. My assistant, Sarah, met me in the private elevator. "Both your cousins are already here," she reported, a slight smile playing on her lips. "Madison's been asking for coffee every 10 minutes, and Trevor's pacing the conference room like a caged animal." "Nervous habits," I observed. "They know their companies are in trouble. They just don't know how much." The conference room occupied the entire top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Trevor and Madison sat on opposite sides of the massive table, both trying to look confident and failing. Their lawyers flanked them, looking considerably more concerned. "What's she doing here?" Madison demanded when I walked in. "This is a private meeting with OP Holdings." Trevor nodded. "Olivia, I know you mean well, but this is far beyond your understanding. Why don't you get us some coffee while we wait for the real executives? I set my briefcase on the table, enjoying the moment. Actually, I think you'll find I understand the situation perfectly. Sarah began distributing folders to everyone in the room. Ladies and gentlemen, please review the documents before you. You'll find complete documentation of OP Holdings' ownership of both Parker Capital and Madison Tech, along with the proposed merger terms. The color drained from Trevor's face as he read. Madison's hands began to shake. This has to be a mistake, she whispered. OP Holdings is, your Olivia Parker, I finished for her, taking my seat at the head of the table. Founder and CEO of OP Holdings, majority shareholder of Thomson Corp., and as of this morning, the new owner of both your companies. Trevor slammed his hand on the table. This is impossible. You're a secretary. No, I corrected him. I let you believe I was a secretary. Just like I let you believe Grandpa's old office building was worthless. Just like I let you both think your companies were still yours to control. But my tech platform, Madison stammered, has been losing money for 3 quarters straight, I finished. The only reason you got that last round of funding was because I arranged it through one of my subsidiary investment firms. Trevor was frantically flipping through the documents. Parker Capital, my father's company, has been mine for months, I said quietly. Those risky investments you've been making to cover your losses. I've been buying up the debt, positioning myself for this moment. My mother burst into the room, followed by several other family members, clearly summoned by panicked texts from Trevor and Madison. What's going on? Why are Trevor and Madison saying something about Olivia and OP Holdings? Perfect timing, I said, standing up. Sarah, please show them the presentation. The wall screen came to life, displaying a complex web of companies, investments, and acquisitions, my true empire, built quietly over 8 years while my family thought I was just pushing papers. OP Holdings, I explained to my stunned relatives, currently controls over $500 million in assets across real estate, technology, and private equity. That includes Thomson Corp., Parker Capital, Madison Tech, and about 30 other companies you've never heard of. But how? My mother whispered. Remember Grandpa's worthless office building, the one you all pitied me for inheriting? It came with property rights and mineral claims worth millions. While you were all busy showing off your success, I was building something real. Madison found her voice, anger replacing shock. You deceived us. All those family gatherings, playing the quiet little secretary, like you played the successful tech entrepreneur. I countered, pretending your company wasn't drowning in debt. Or Trevor, bragging about Parker Capital's deals while taking increasingly desperate risks to stay afloat. We were building something, Trevor protested. No, I corrected him. You were playing at building something. You were so busy looking successful that you forgot to actually create success. I turned to the lawyers. Now shall we discuss the terms of the merger? Both companies will be restructured under the OP Holdings umbrella. Current management will be reviewed. You can't do this, Madison whispered. Actually, I can. And I did. While you were all laughing at the quiet secretary, I was learning every aspect of business from the ground up. I was making connections, building relationships, understanding how real power works. My mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me, or would you have tried to take control, just like you did with every other aspect of my life? I opened my briefcase and pulled out an old photograph. Grandpa in his office, teaching me about property rights and quiet power. Grandpa knew what he was doing when he left me that worthless building. He knew I'd understand its real value. The next few hours were a blur of contracts, negotiations, and restructuring plans. By the end, both Madison and Trevor had to admit their companies needed the stability OP Holdings could provide. Their pride was bruised, but their jobs, at least for now, were secure. As the lawyers filed out, my mother lingered. All these years, she said softly, we thought we were the successful ones. Success doesn't always need to announce itself. I replied, remembering Grandpa's words. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most powerful. Over the next few months, things changed dramatically. Madison's tech platform, with proper management and funding, actually began to show promise. Trevor, stripped of his CEO title but retained as an investment advisor, finally started learning the business properly instead of just playing at it. The family dynamics shifted too. The condescending comments stopped. The pitying looks disappeared. At the next family gathering, when someone asked about my work, they listened, really listened, for the first time. My little office building. I kept it, renovating Grandpa's old office, but leaving his desk exactly where it had always been. Sometimes late at night, I'd sit there and remember his lessons about quiet power and patient success. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I found Trevor waiting in the lobby. "I've been thinking," he said, looking humbled. "All those years we spent competing, showing off, we miss what Grandpa was really trying to teach us." I smiled, touching the key I still wore around my neck. "What was that?" "That real success isn't about looking powerful. It's about being powerful. And you built an empire while we were just playing pretend." I thought about all the family dinners, all the condescending comments, all the years of being underestimated. "Want to know the real secret, Trevor?" He nodded eagerly. "Success doesn't need an audience. It just needs patience, wisdom, and the strength to keep going when everyone else thinks you're failing." As I walked back to my car that night, I looked up at the city skyline, my skyline, though few people knew it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. Sometimes it's proving yourself right, quietly and completely, until they have no choice but to see the truth that was there all along. And sometimes, just sometimes, that truth comes with a $500 million empire and the sweetest vindication of all. Success on your own terms.